Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. All right, guys. Today's date, September the 10th, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan on the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we do try to watch our language here on the podcast. However, sometimes words do fly. At the same time, there may be videos that may be shown that might be still intended to. Who knew one little word could mess you up? There may be sometimes that there may be videos that might be too intense for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, where do we start with? Unfortunately, we always seem to start with the former failure-in-chief Donald Trump for two reasons today. One of the reasons is basically because of this. If you guys did not know, that there was a lawsuit way, I know it feels so long ago, but really it was sometime after Donald Trump's election, where he, of course, Hillary Clinton and others had sat there and said that Trump may have interfered. Of course, evidence would suggest that he possibly did. The Mueller investigation, albeit was redacted, had suggested he may have known about Russian collusion in the election. That being said, however, there was a lawsuit that Donald Trump put out because Donald Trump is good for one thing and one thing alone. He is good for lawsuits, litigation, tying things up in court for years to come, only to hope that the other side will either give up or run out of money trying to keep the case going. I myself am still wondering how in the world is Trump flush, but then I realized this is the same guy who will turn around and fleece his own community in order to line up his pockets. Don't believe me? Look at his site. It is still selling. People are still buying MAGA stuff. Crazy. That being said, however, I did want to point out the fact that he did actually have a lawsuit against former Secretary of State, former First Lady, former U.S. Senator Hillary Clinton, and the FBI, and several others. However, a judge in Florida, it almost sounds like a story whenever you talk about Trump. A judge in Florida dismissed the lawsuit, saying that it was nothing more than a smokescreen. And again, I guess we shouldn't be too hard on judges. After all, a judge in Florida also approved the special master over the documents that Donald Trump thought he could declassify because he was once a former failure-in-chief that did not read the U.S. Constitution, that did not consult with his attorney general, that did not consult with his legal people. Because yes, White House is full of assistance personnel. He chose not to use them. Anyway, the documents that he did have may actually still be an issue just because, again, we know off the bat that these were classified top secret documents. Top secret so, in fact, that the FBI had to get a special clearance to review said documents that were in Donald Trump's possession. That being said, we do have more information about the special master. And again, this is just stuff that you cannot make up, as the DOJ has finally decided to appeal the decision of approving a special master. And again, you can't make this up.
To that big breaking news story we mentioned at the top of the hour, the Justice Department has filed an appeal to that stunning ruling by Judge Eileen Cannon, which appoints an independent arbiter, a so-called special master, something Bill Barr called a red herring, to review the records seized by the FBI in its search of Mar-a-Lago exactly 1 month ago. DOJ says it is seeking to block a part of that judge's order that at least temporarily prevents investigators from using the more than 100 classified documents that were seized from Mar-a-Lago in its investigation. Here's what DOJ says about those documents. Quote, plaintiff, that means Donald Trump, does not and could not assert that he owns or has any possessory interest in classified records, that he has any right to have those government records returned to him, or that he can advance any plausible claims of attorney-client privilege as to such records that would bar the government from reviewing or using them. Joining us now, Andrew Weissman, former DOJ prosecutor and senior member of Robert Mueller's special counsel investigation. Rick Stengel is still at the table. Andrew, I want to really drill down on this because I believe what DOJ is arguing is this nightmare scenario that Judge Eileen Cannon's ruling also forced the intelligence community to stop its review of what damage has been done to U.S. national security. But we'll get to that in a minute. The appeal, a good idea in your view?
Yes, but let me give you, having looked at these, there are actually two documents that have been filed. There's something called a protective appeal. And then there's also a document where they make a motion to Judge Cannon in the district court. So what they're doing is in the district court, they tell the judge that they want to have her stay a part of her stay. If you remember, she ordered that there could not be a review of anything that was seized in the search warrant, whether it's classified material or unclassified material. They had to put a full stop to the criminal investigation using those documents. What DOJ did is said, Judge, we need you to rethink a part of that decision. You really made an error when it came to anything that is classified. And you called out, as I knew you would, the exact best quote that puts in succinctly what the argument is. What they also said is, we have filed a protective notice of appeal to the 11th Circuit. If there is not a ruling in our favor on this by a week from today, the 15th, we're going forward with our appeal on this issue. So they've done two things, giving the district court the option of ruling in their favor. And it's a really strong brief. I think this is a much stronger brief, but in some ways you can't fault the Department of Justice because it was hard to know just how sort of nutty and off the wall her decision was going to be. But this is a very, very strong brief saying, how can somebody like Donald Trump have any interest in, any possessory interest in classified documents? He can't. They belong by definition to the government, not to a private citizen. And those communications don't raise attorney-client privilege because by definition, classified documents are not communications between Donald Trump and his lawyers. So it can't raise those issues. So it's a very, very strong brief asking her to carve that out. And then they really wrap themselves around an argument that I've been pushing, which is it's impossible to separate out the national security review from the criminal case. They're one and the same. And they, in a footnote, drop essentially the point I was thinking of, which is they say, how does Merrick Garland and Lisa Monaco, how are they supposed to be involved in both when they supervise both issues? They're leaders of the intelligence community, but they're also supervising the criminal case. So it basically says, Judge, you have not worked through just how much you're harming sort of the national security review that you said could go on. And of course, they don't have to say it, but in the background, you know, there's all these reports about just how sensitive the information is that they're talking about.
So let's stop him right there because he said it. He literally said it in so many ways, but to break down what he's saying. So the judge that did approve the special master, every legal expert is doing what the Department of Justice said they were going to do. They're going to appeal it because in layman's terms, where in the world is this judge getting the footing to actually approve this? Because they're saying that they want someone to be a special master, which is a person that oversees stuff. Think of it like an arbitrator in a mediation case. The problem with this case is the documents in question. They're not personal. They're government issue, which means that, according to the DOJ, the former failure in chief doesn't have a leg to stand on. Because all this is, and again, I keep pointing this out, y'all. This is nothing more than a big ass smokescreen. Trump knows he was caught with documents he shouldn't have. Now, keep in mind, beforehand, they asked him multiple times to return said documents. So the government has known that those documents have been in his possession for quite some time. He was informed, asked, to return said documents. And then he decided not to. And then that's when they said, all right, you asked for it. So again, this is where the president, again, when he thought he was failure in chief, could wave a hand across and go, I declassify all this. That's not how declassification works. That's the DOJ's arguing because as this time of this actual podcast, yesterday, Friday, they actually had to provide said judge with a list of approved individuals for the special master for the case. Because the DOJ has decided to appeal it, they pretty much sat there and gave a big bird to Trump's lawyers and his league and to him himself and said, no, we're going to appeal this decision because the judge who actually approved this has no leg to stand on because none of those documents are his. And again, this keeps the reason why the special master was put in place, the reason why the judge approved this, the reason why Trump and his team saw it as a big ass win is because you guys got to remember, one of those documents has already been confirmed to contain nuclear information that was caught with Trump at his home. Now, I don't know about you, but a person who has obsessed with the romanticizing of being a dictator, thinking he's loved by all, thinking he's God's gift to saving this country, has information that's so sensitive, would make me a little nervous about him having it, especially nuclear information. Now, I'm not saying he'll have the nuclear launch codes, but he may have information on allies. He might have information on our enemies. He may have information that might seem very, very opportunistic, if you will. I mean, let's be honest. He could sell. I mean, that's why the whole point we're saying with the Espionage Act. That's the reason why this reason why he keeps pointing out. Because yes, with those documents in hand, he would be seen as a liability. He could be bought. He could be blackmailed. I mean, well, technically, he's already bought by the Saudi Arabian family. He's already been bought by the Russians. But you see the point I'm making. He's already a compromised individual. Now he's a compromised individual that used to have top secret documents he's not supposed to have. And you can see why the FBI and every other agency out there is a little concerned about the documents he's had because it could compromise national security. Which again, right back to the Espionage Act, which again, Trump and his people were happy about the special master because it put a hold on them going through the documents. But now, because it's being appealed and if it gets shot down, the FBI can continue to comb through those documents and trust and believe if this is what takes Trump down, if this is what actually takes Trump down, I will be freaking amazed. But we'll follow that story as it comes along. The other story I wanted to go into, guys, again, about following the story of Donovan Lewis, the man, another black man who was killed by police, unarmed, mind you. Well, the city that was killed in, Columbus, it was in Columbus, Ohio, when this happened. So actually, the chief, excuse me for that. The chief of police, Elaine Brown, in Columbus, Ohio, who's actually over the police department, has suggested that no-knock warrants will need to be readjusted. Which, again, you guys have known my stance on no-knock warrants. I think that no-knock warrants are the way no-knock warrants are used. That in recent history, no-knock warrants have led to murders of innocent people, especially unarmed individuals, because of the way that police do come in unannounced. I mean, again, a no-knock warrant, I understand it. But the way I look at it with no-knock warrants, they don't really serve a purpose, except for the fact of, shock and awe, catching a suspect unaware and hopefully taking them down and taking them off the streets. That's great in theory, but the way they're trying to change this law, or I should say the chief Elaine Brown trying to change this law, is that there needs to be more evidence to show this. Keep in mind, of course, the way they have it set up, quote unquote, effective immediately and until revised or rescinded by me. No pre-print arrest warrant shall be served at private residences for all misdemeanor offenses, including domestic violence and non-violent felony offenses between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. without the prior approval of a lieutenant or above. Yeah, that's helpful. Let's go ahead and instead of doing the warrants, let's put a time on these warrants and also get a higher lieutenant or above's approval. The problem with that is that, again, you're basically saying, well, we're trying to attach accountability to this. It may, but here's the other problem I have with this. If you're going to do, if no knock warrants can never get rid of. As much as I want them to go, if no-knock warrants can never be rid of them, that law enforcement truly believes that without no-knock warrants they can't do their job. Okay, fine, but let's make it harder to obtain. That's my thing. If we cannot get rid of no-knock warrants, let's make them harder to obtain. If you truly believe that a no-knock warrant is needed, the law enforcement will have to show that there is a beyond credible, highly dangerous threat. Has to be. They have to show it. It has to be going through the proper channels. It can't just be, hey, this person may possibly be armed and dangerous. No, it has to be a credible threat. In the same sense, where higher threats of extreme prejudice in the armed forces are requiring more information, so does it need to be with law enforcement. If we cannot get rid of no-knock warrants, make them harder to obtain. So when those no-knock warrants are issued, that at least hey, you've covered your ass. You can't sit there and say, well, we just assumed he was dangerous and went in. No, we have credible intel and proof that yes, this man or individual was dangerous, and therefore we had to move with extreme prejudice or extreme consideration of extreme prejudice. That word throws me off too. But that's what it should be. Because again, how many times we've heard this story of officers using no-knock warrants and they're already on tilt to kill? Because I said it best. Imagine if you're sleeping in your home. And law enforcement comes through. You're asleep. You're groggy. You don't know what's going on. You're discombobulated. You see people in your house that you've never seen before. Now all of a sudden, you're in panic mode. So any move that you make to a trigger-happy cop will look like a weapon, even though you may not have one. So again, this is why I said the dangers of no-knock warrants. Or if you're capping a sleeping suspect unaware, there are non-lethal options. But again, if it was me, and I still say if it was me, why can't we get rid of no-knock warrants? Or if we can't get rid of them, let's make them harder to obtain. That's all I'm saying. It's going to be one of two ways. If we can't get rid of them, because the way violence is across the world, across the states, including in Memphis, their recent shooting of a man that was released from jail and then went on a shooting rampage. I get it. I understand it. It's the reason why, Joe is being, old crime bill Joe. Those ones that's called Joe a long time ago, because he's introduced another crime bill as far as giving more money to law enforcement, more money to hire cops and things of that nature. It's almost like the 84 crime bill all over again. I can't argue it because it's doing exactly that. But my thing is, but not to get away from no-knock warrants, but that's it going to be handled one of two ways. That's just the way I think about it. But switching gears, the other way I would think about this is the reason. You guys remember a few, maybe about 2 weeks ago that we talked about that there was once a bill that was put in that would root out Nazi-like behavior and white supremacy in law enforcement. That not only would locate but root it out, just because the fact that we've known for decades that white supremacists and Nazi sympathizers have infiltrated all areas of law enforcement. Yeah, we also need to start looking at our armed services. The reason why I'm saying that, guys, is because of this story here. An ex-soldier who had enlisted in the Army had sat there and said on his application for security clearance that he joined the Army to become more proficient in killing Black people. Of course, this was allegedly declared by the authorities. But the officer, Specialist Killian Ryan, as you can see right there, charged with federally relying on his application for security clearance, has online ties with accounts associated with radically motivated extremism. This was actually by what the prosecutors have claimed. Why are we surprised? Why? I'm not surprised anymore because, again, it's not just law enforcement. It's not just the FBI. It's not just it's not all level. Every level of law enforcement has that problem, and armed forces are no different. But imagine if you are literally and figuratively serving next to this man. You're a Black man, and you see something that he says, "quote unquote," I serve for combat experience, so I can be more proficient in killing the N-word. And you have multiple social media accounts that are associated with radical extreme groups, and you have to serve next to this man? I don't blame him. But the Army did do right. I mean, as soon as they caught it, because again, he applied for a security clearance. Now, anybody does not know this, when you apply for a security clearance, the Department of Defense, and the Department of Justice literally look at your whole life, not just the last 5 years, not the last 10 years. I mean, from birth till now, they go through everything. They go through your elementary, they go through middle school, high school, college. Anytime you ever applied for a credit card, anytime you ever applied for a home, anytime you ever applied for a car, you've been late on, if you've ever been late on bills with utilities, and then they go through your social media. They go to see, because again, Patriot Act, they can see anything they want. That yes, they comb through your entire digital footprint to make sure that you are completely okay. Or at least that you're enough to where you're not, enough to where you're not a risk. At least that's the way I put it. But again, this is a cautionary tale of the reason why I hold that against Republicans. Because Republicans, for that bill that I talked about, that was about 2 weeks ago, that was being put in motion, they're the ones that shot it down. Now ask yourself, why would every Republican shoot down the idea of looking for Nazi sympathizers and white supremacists in higher levels of law enforcement and our armed services? Why would they shoot that down? I mean, aside from the obvious. That's all I'm saying. But another thing, as we move forward in politics, I'm actually surprised about the Democrats. Like I said before, I know we're a couple of months away from midterm elections, and now all of a sudden the Democrats seem to be getting things passed. Maybe not all things we want passed, but they seem to be getting things passed. That being said, it looks like even though the Democrats had failed to codify women's rights after Roe versus Wade was overturned, and I never thought in my nearly 40 years on this earth I'd be saying that, but they seem to actually be gaining ground on codifying same-sex marriages. As Chuck Schumer, as you can see there, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer did sit there and quote that they will vote on the bill to codify same-sex marriage that would be happening next Wednesday. As of this point, all Democrats do seem to be on board with the Respect for Marriage Act, including some Republicans. I know what you're thinking. Some Republicans, because they may have at least some Republican support, maybe not a lot, because Republicans believe the simple fact of the matter of, well, God only wanted marriage between a man and a woman because the Bible said so. Here's my answer to that. Was Adam and Eve married? I mean, I didn't see God ordaining themselves at the Garden of Good and Evil and saying, I pronounced thee man and wife. So, I mean, if you really want to be honest, Adam and Eve been shacking up since the beginning of time. But not to go too deep into that, because we really could. I could mess with some Christian people about that. But no. But Republicans do believe in the fact, they don't believe in same-sex marriages because they don't believe in LGBTQ plus or same-sex or non-binary or any of those things, any of those identifiers. They choose to basically not acknowledge it, and a lot of them will cite their religion. So I could see a lot of them because, again, we shouldn't be surprised. We've seen this from, Uncle Ruckus himself, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, that turned around, sit there and said that certain decisions would need to be revisited. And I keep saying this all the time. If you thought Roe versus Wade was the end of it, it's not. They are going to go after everything else humanly possible while the Supreme Court has a conservative majority. We've already seen it happen with Roe versus Wade. You think it will not happen with Overell versus Hodges? You are completely nuts. This is the reason why the Democrats are trying to, as of next Wednesday, vote on this act. Because again, a lot of same-sex marriages acts, if it does get turned down, the problem is, and a lot of people don't understand this, if Overell versus Hodges ever got turned down, there are if not thousands, millions of same-sex marriages will be completely unrecognized. And the more dangerous thing about that is, if those marriages are literally not recognized, it can cause ramifications from insurance coverage to bank accounts to almost everything that a heterosexual couple deals with, especially with the fact of insurance. Because insurance companies, you don't think they're not going to be paying attention to that? Insurance companies will be paying attention the moment that same-sex marriages Because if it does go back to the states, there are going to be some states that are not going to recognize it. And as long as you have health insurance in that state, that can't be compromised. So yes, for a lot of people that say this doesn't affect them, if you're not in a same-sex marriage, I get it. You 9 times out of 10 won't be affected. But at the same time, you should be worried because every landmark case that we're having that was once decided by a Supreme Court is now being overturned by a Republican Supreme Court. And again, you should be worried. Very, very worried. But we will follow that on next Wednesday to see how the vote goes. It may go in favor of Democrats because, again, even though Biden right now is kind of doing the victory lap, even though a lot of his stuff, I mean, don't get me wrong, passing the infrastructure bill, okay, cool. Passing the your Inflation Reduction Act, it does some things, but it's more of a love letter to Republicans. And, you know, you're passing along some student debt relief, even though if you were at certain colleges, disabled, things of that nature, and your debt wiped out, there are some things that Biden has done right, but, you know, I mean, if we're looking at it from a report card standpoint, I mean, it's still a C. I mean, you weren't actually B'ers or better, but if I had to grade Biden right now, I'd say a C because he's middle of the road, but, you know, it could be way better. But again, we'll follow that on Wednesday to see what the Democrats can do with that. Another thing I did want to point out, because, again, I don't understand, and forgive me as I rub my head because I have to start with this story because this, how can I put this ever so nicely? I find myself repeating this a lot, that parents, if you are not an educator, if you don't have a degree in child care development, if you don't have a degree in educational studies, if you've never had experience teaching children or developing a curriculum or actually running a school or running a school program involving kids, if you do not fit that criteria, in my opinion, you have no leg to stand on when you talk about what things that your kids should be learning or what books you should be or books they should be reading, he or she should be reading in a school environment. Why do I say that? The reason why I say that is basically because of this, that we now have another story that literally a Republican in Virginia is wanting to introduce another bill. This bill would basically give parents more control over what books are being allowed to be read by kids across the country. Quote unquote, the Republican says we have to give parents more authority over the schools and what their children have access to while they're in the schools. He wants to introduce a bill that will identify titles that contain sexual content and implement a rating system for library books that would essentially be based on the Motion Picture Association film rating system. Books marked with parental advisory warning labels, and parents would be able to opt their children out of reading books with a particular rating. He said that titles will be rated from G, appropriate to all audiences, R, 17. You kind of get the idea of where I'm going with this. This is the problem that bothers me. The problem that bothers me is that for the simple fact of the matter, it's the other part that you want to put books on a rating system. Now, for anybody that's ever read Fahrenheit 451, this is the plot, sort of. Fahrenheit 451, 1984. I'll even say Animal Farm to a certain extent. The thing about this is, it amazes me so that the one thing that a lot of Republicans stand on when it comes to controlling what children read or taught, it's always that other part. We want to curb books that have sexual content and implementation that might be indoctrinating the kids. Indoctrinating the kids. You know what else is indoctrinating the kids? Religious schools. Religious schools. Schools with Christian, schools with Catholics, schools with anything of a diocese. If it's a religious school, to me, it's indoctrination. Why? Because I guarantee in every one of these schools, there's a class for religion. A religion that's taught around a certain path, if you will. And it's teaching young kids. I mean, me and my fiance have gotten into multiple arguments where we talk about our future children, and I've always sat there and said it best. I don't want my future children going to these schools. Because again, number one, I refuse to pay private tuition money to a school to teach them about the Bible or other religions when they can get it home for free. At the same time, I don't want indoctrination to happen to them. I send my kids to schools, send my kids to a school for education and to be better equipped for society. That's the reason why I send them to school. But if we're talking about indoctrination, Christian or religion schools are at the top tier of that, in my opinion, because it's amazing the systematic robotic purpose, the robotic path they put these kids on. I'm just sorry. It's almost like watching The Handmaid's Tale for Jesus without the breeding. But going back to the article itself, that a lot of Republicans want to sit there and say, we want to control our kids from reading certain books. Like what? Oh, what about Harry Potter? What's wrong with Harry Potter? It's a book about it's a book about spells. No, it's not. Ask any pagan. Any pagan or Wiccan will look at that and go, that's not spells. It's children's literature. It's just like, if you want to talk indoctrination, go back to Fantasia with Mickey. Mickey was performing spells in animation and nobody complained. Mickey messed up by taking on the wizard's hat. Nobody complained. We have literal movies dedicated to magic and things of that nature. We have multiple books, not just Harry Potter. There are plenty of other books for Harry Potter talking about magic. And yet, nobody batted an eye. Oh, but what about 50 Shades of Grey? The only people I know reading that are bored housewives. Bored housewives and women that just want a little edgy in their lives. And maybe some guys too. I shouldn't put 50 Shades of Grey just to women, because there may be guys out there that may have enjoyed it, or just people that love an intriguing story. But I guarantee 50 Shades of Grey is not being read by your average 8th or 9th grader or 6th grader. But you know what it is being read to them in the elementary schools, what they are reading? Roots, To Kill a Mockingbird, A Raisin in the Sun. I mean, Catcher in the Rye, Of Mice and Men, Fahrenheit 451, Animal Farm. I mean, those books that I guarantee are going to be on somebody's list, because the books they don't want these kids to read are usually from authors from people of color and people from LGBTQ plus communities. Those books, I guarantee, are banned. But you know what books they'll probably push down a kid's throat? Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, or any Focus on the Family books. But it always annoys me that the kibosh on the whole thing is that parents believe that they have to do this because you think the teachers don't know any better. And that's the part that always bugs me. That if you do not have education to back up what you're saying, only the fact that you think you know better than a teacher, become a teacher. You should become a teacher. I say it to all parents who believe in the fact of what the Republicans are doing. If you think that you need more control over your children's education or just their public education system in your hometown, do me a favor, become a teacher. Because just like in this next video I'm about to show, you'll see why so many teachers are still on strike. But if parents think they can do better, plenty of openings.
Students in Seattle are staying home for a second day in a row as teachers there are on strike. They're demanding higher pay and lighter workloads that union members say got out of control during the pandemic. President of the Seattle Education Association, Jennifer Matter, joins me live now for more on this. Jennifer, thank you for being here. The Seattle Education Association and the school board have been negotiating for months now over demands that the union has made, they say, to address teacher burnout. So how are these negotiations going? Are you any closer to a deal?
We're hopeful. Our bargaining teams are back at it today, and we hope that the district, our Seattle Public Schools, will come to an agreement, recognizing that our educators have put forward proposals that are going to improve student supports, which we know our students need.
Now, Jennifer, ABC News spoke to teachers out on the picket line yesterday. They said the strike is to ensure that kids have a healthy learning environment. The district says that, especially when it comes to disabled children, it wants to focus on student needs rather than fixed staffing ratios. What's your response to that?
Well, we share the vision of providing more supports for students, but we also know that without having adequate staffing to be able to support our students or students with IEPs who, by federal mandate, deserve an individualized education plan to be able to give that individual attention, that means we need more staffing. And so that is what we're fighting for students with IEPs and also for student supports for mental health. It's not just about special education. It's about also increasing the number of counselors and social workers and family support workers, being able to meet what we know is in our careers as educators, the greatest needs we've ever seen.
Now, technically, public employees do not have a legally protected right to strike in Washington state, and districts have taken teachers' unions to court over the legality of striking in the past. Are you worried at all about legal repercussions?
You know, what educators, none of us want to be striking. We never make this kind of decision lightly. But at the same time, we are going to stand up for what we know our students deserve. And that's what, in fact, I'm at a school site right now. You can see the educators behind me standing up for students. And we know that we had a choice. We could either return to status quo, which was not enough. Students, it's as an educator, you go to work every day because you want to work with students and you want to do the best for students. And when you know that your system is set up so that you can't do your best, that's what we're out here on the line, is to fight for the best. And that's why our bargaining team is still at it and on the line. We're supporting them because we know our district can afford to do this and that our students deserve this.
So, Jennifer, what happens in the meantime? What are parents doing while the kids are home? And how long do you think that this strike could last?
Well, first I have to say we've had an incredible amount of community and parent support. Many, in fact, I've met a few parents today that showed up to support our picket line behind me. I know that, and there's been an outpouring of support in so many different ways. I know it's not easy for parents. A lot of educators are parents, and we're also going through this, like, how do we juggle? But at the same time, we also know that it's important to stand up for what students deserve. And so that's why we're out here.
And think about that for a second. I keep saying this all the time because people that want to be teachers, this is what teachers deal with. Teachers deal with the fact that they have been asking. Like I said, this is not a new thing. Teachers have been asking about this for decades. Teachers are not getting paid enough. They don't get the assistance that they need, whether it's state funding, whether it's less, having a better ratio of students to teachers in classrooms. Because I've said this once and I'll keep saying this again. It is amazing that every year the Department of Education gets their budget cut. And every year the Department of Defense gets a whole new budget ceiling, even though in Department of Defense, there is no return on investment. In education, there is. If the Department of Education was given the same budget as the Department of Defense, we would have smarter people and less wars. That's all I'm saying. But this is what happens literally, if you think about it, teachers is kind of the eclipse of what's going on right now, especially with the fact that people are getting burned out. People are quiet quitting. At least that's what most businesses and most rich people like to say. Well, you're quiet quitting. Oh, well, for all those that don't know, quiet quitting means you are basically doing your job. You're not going above and beyond. And that's the one thing, not to go on a small little rant, but quiet quitting is the most BS term I have ever heard employers and rich people use. Well, if you're quiet quitting, then you're not really applying yourself. No. What is happening is that people who work are tired of being exploited. Businesses have enjoyed exploitation of workers because I keep saying this all the time. The more the numbers creep up, the harder it is to ignore. If one person is saying that they're burned out in a company of 1,000 people, the company will sit there and say, okay, bye, you're one person. But out of that 1,000, if 997 decide to do the same thing as that one person, now you have the company's attention. And it's not just fact of teachers. Teachers should be getting all the help they need. But with quiet quitting, they always say, like for instance, if you work from If you work from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, by 5 in the afternoon, you're done. Oh, well, you're quiet quitting. No, I've worked my job. And for some people, it's like, oh, well, you're going on vacation. We need you to work. We need you to work while you're on vacation. The hell with that. PTO, prepare the others. Look, you're not saving the company. I was like, my whole thing is I always tell people, like I used to tell my fiance all the time when we were going out and about and she had to check her phone, I said, let it go. I used to let it go because there's no such thing as corporate loyalty. You could bend over backwards for a corporation. You could work every weekend. You can take on every extra project. You can kiss as much ass as you like. But that very same company that you're busting your ass, blood, sweat, and tears for, will turn around and tell you thank you for your service in the same day. If you croaked on the job opening will be posted fast in your obituary. There is no such thing as corporate loyalty. But when a whole bunch of people realize that and just work to what they agreed to in their worker contract, now all of a sudden it's quiet quitting. No, because there's no. I mean, as I sat there and said, and I've yet to hear a difference arguments on this, that there is no reward in working harder at a job that you're already getting paid for that you agreed to do. There's no reward for it anymore. There's no reward for doing anything more to increase the company's profit line when none of that comes to you and no benefit comes to you. But a lot of people, especially during this pandemic, are realizing that work is not, for all work-life balance, that work used to take up a lot of it. There wasn't a balance. It was a seesaw. It was a seesaw that was permanently stuck to one side. And a lot of people have gotten off that seesaw and realized not only were they better for it physically, but also mentally. And companies out there are trying to go back to the way it was, but it'll never go back to the way it was. I said it before at the beginning of the year on this podcast, in the middle of the pandemic. Whatever normal that businesses think we're going back to is no longer there. We won't go back to what we used to be. We have to accept that there's going to be a new normal. That, for the simple fact of the matter, a lot of people are going to put their lives first and work second. A lot of people are going to work only their hours that they agreed to work. A lot of people are not going to do the extra stuff. Businesses have to adjust. In the same sense, where, again, going back to I see a lot of people, well, how does this apply with teachers? It applies to teachers because, again, if you gave teachers everything that they wanted, we wouldn't have a problem. In the same sense with employers, if employers paid people, if employers pay people and not try to pay them cheaply, you wouldn't have a problem. You wouldn't have shortages everywhere. You wouldn't be sitting there. You wouldn't have problems, shortages, delays in every other country, in every other sector of the country. And the funny thing about it is this can easily be solved with paying people market rate or better. Quit using the market rate as a bench rate to say, well, I can pay under that. Well, you should be paying exactly that, sometimes even more. But as long as we have this, again, this is the third teacher strike. There was one in Columbus a week before. Now we have one in Seattle. You don't think for 1 second that this will not make more. The only people that's going to suffer are going to be the students, unfortunately, because you have states out there, state legislatures out there, along with our current government, that truly believe that education is secondary when it comes to the Department of Defense. And that's really messed up. But we're right along, guys. I didn't want to cover this because we did talk about Jackson, Mississippi having water pressure issues, especially with the water being shut off due to contamination. It has been brought back on, but they're still under a boil water notice with reminders of Flint, Michigan. But would you like to know that they're not the only people that have issues? No. Truth be told, there are several other states that are having water crises besides Jackson, Mississippi. Benton Harbor, Michigan has an issue with pipes that need to be replaced. So does New York City. Baltimore, Maryland right now is under a boil water notice because of E. coli. Las Vegas, Nevada is having a water shortage crisis because of their reservoirs being dried up. Honolulu, Hawaii, again, another infrastructure problem as far as trying to actually get out pipes that should have been replaced a long time ago. Same way with Texas, because their water systems are woefully outdated. Now think about that. New York City, New York, Benton Harbor, Michigan, Baltimore, Maryland, Jackson, Mississippi, Rio Grande Valley, Texas, Honolulu, Hawaii, and Las Vegas, New Mexico. Not Las Vegas, Nevada, by the way. Las Vegas, New Mexico. We just literally named off 7 locations in the U.S. right now that all have water crises. And at the same time, you think, this is why I sit there and said so long ago that there had to be something done. There had to be something done about the water crisis, because the simple fact of the matter is, guys, we are running into an issue that's going to come up very soon. America is woefully needing of a major overhaul, not just infrastructure, electricity, because California's trying to deal with their power grid not being overloaded. Same thing that happened in Texas during a snowstorm. Their power grid got overloaded, except they're independent. They're not hooked to the national grid. We've already seen, even in my state of Tennessee, where Nashville got flooded and the water system could not handle it because Tennessee was not considered. I mean, Tennessee, Nashville, Middle Tennessee especially, was not considered a flood credible threat state. It is now. This is the reason why Biden's infrastructure bill was needing to be passed immediately. But with that being passed, there needs to be repairs also installed immediately. Like I said, you have 7 locations right now that are all dealing with water issues, and Flint, Michigan is still dealing with them. Those pipes still have been replaced. So you can only imagine that with America's infrastructure crumbling, pipes, roads, dams, bridges, electrical grids, actual laying of internet lines, so much needs to be replaced. And my fear is they get pushed to the wayside, especially in conservative states. Like I said about Jackson, Mississippi, Governor Tate was more concerned about getting abortion to be banned than he was about making sure that his state was up to date. Even though Mississippi is dead last in education, but yet first in welfare. Well, not first, that's wrong. Third in welfare and welfare recipients. The thing I'm pointing out is that there has to be a major overhaul. And if it does not happen soon, then Jackson, Mississippi, and Flint, Michigan is going to be happening everywhere else besides those 7 locations. The simple fact of the matter, we need to, again, America. I hate to say it, just like the Kardashians, America needs an upgrade quickly. But with that being said, guys, we're going to move on to our feel-good segment, because usually have a Frack guy here. We do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose faith in humanity. But hey, it's the weekend. We want to leave you guys out with some good vibrations, and hopefully this story will do just that. I have to give credit whoever does this, because if you've ever been to school, whether you've picked your own kids up or you've picked up other kids, you ever see those signs where it says park here, lane here, pick up here, drop off here? You see those signs all the time. Well, there was a certain, I don't know who this person is at this elementary school. First and foremost, they are not given enough credit for how creative they've been. For example, they featured a sign with MC Hammer saying can't park here. And of course, MC Hammer with the hammer pants, let's be honest, somebody's always owned a few of them, which is just a way of just saying that, hey, you can't park here. But it's inventive, because the first thing you look at is, oh, MC Hammer's in school? Or somebody's an MC Hammer fan. Or you might have a bunch of kids sit there going, who's MC Hammer? Which, again, that's a whole nother story. They also have NSYNC tell the kids bye, bye, bye. Which again was actually I thought was cute for all you NSYNC fans or just Justin Timberlake fans. Of course, Ryan Gosling, pretty much your woman's that's wrong to say. I'm gonna say it anyway. Possibly your woman's hall pass. Of course, hey girl, move your car all the way up. And of course, let's not also forget, don't go blocking drop-off lanes with TLC's waterfall cover. Again, whoever this person is, or pivot out of the drop-off line, whoever this individual is, aside from giving somebody a laugh as they pick up and drop off their kids, is doing a wonderful service. But I thought that was cool, because let's be honest, nobody's looking forward to waking up at the crack of dawn and dropping your kids off at school. But, hopefully those signs will make you laugh. I know they did when I read them. So With that being said, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast. I do thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate it. Before I get out of here, do some shameless plugging. As always, you can find me, BlackBox447, on almost every social out there. So definitely like and follow me, as I do post a lot of things that I watch and review, as well as gym stuff, because I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, guys, the link at the bottom, let me make that just a little bit bigger so you can see that, is going to be here. That you can copy and paste that into your browser, take to my link tree. That is the YouTube and Facebook groups. Excuse me, for all my podcasts, How the Frack Got Here, Get Bitten, of course, the Off Limits podcast. So definitely like, share, and subscribe on there. Also, check out my buddy, Big VZA Dot. You can find him, as you can see there, Big VZA Dot on all socials. They're the one was put on Facebook. He usually does post. He posts a lot of things on TikTok now about what Big Busy is thinking. I just think, pretty funny, but he also is back to making beats. So definitely check him out there on his socials as well as on Facebook. And with that being said, guys, I do want to say, if you're going to be out and about with a lot of heavy foot traffic, please, oh, please take care of yourselves. The reason why I say that is COVID and its many other variants and things out there, that nature are out there. Please wear a mask and protect yourself, because you protect yourself, you protect others, because we definitely still are in a pandemic area. You should do your best to make sure that you are doing everything you can to protect yourself. Also, be nice. Be nice to each other. I'm not saying be saints, but check up on people you haven't talked to in a while. Make sure they're doing all right. Let them know that you're checking on them, because when you do a lot more checking on them, you may actually be done not only just brightening up their day, but you also be saving life in the process, because each of us are going through a battle that nobody knows about. But like I said, check up on your good friends, your strong friends, and brothers. If you are complete strangers to each other, head nod, say what's up, say hi, because I'm so tired of brothers just mean mugging as they walk past. We need to get back to just being able to say hi. I'm not asking you to carry on a full-blown conversation. Just say hi. How you doing? Stuff like that. What's up? Head nod, something. But, let's not treat each other as strangers and just try to have some camaraderie. That's all I'm saying. The last thing I'll say about How the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we're trying to give you all the information to inform you, to inform yourself, as well as provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first black woman Supreme Court, like electing our first black woman to Federal Board of Governors, electing our first black 4-star military general. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up by our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game? And most importantly, how the Frack Got Here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Let me know what you think of what we all talked about today. Today, words have been just missing me today. Let me know if you have any difference of opinion, or just things that you want to point out that we need to follow. Aside from that, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this.